Hey, Green Machine friends and fans of fun. We have a giant amount of books to do this week. I mean, it was probably the best week for comics that we've seen all year. So we're just going to jump right into it. And of course, we're going to start off with the big one, the one that everyone wants us to talk about, anyways. And that is Absolute Carnage. And is it good? Yeah, it's absurdly good. It's outstanding. It's amazing. It's basically broken up into like a three-part story that centers around Venom, Eddie Brock's kid, and Spider-Man, which is pretty much everything you want out of this event going into it. It also we do get to see Carnage in his new form. We do get to see what he's doing with other people who have the DNA attached to their spines. It's a great read. Honestly, it's definitely my pick of the week. It was amazing. The art was totally on point. The art, it felt like an Absolute Carnage event should. I mean, just a lot of red and ambers and everything else. The story plays out really well. It's not confusing. Honestly, it's one of the best things I think Donny Cates has ever written. And that's just putting it lightly. Like, it was so good. And it pretty much spans the spectrum of emotions throughout it. I was a little bit scared by the end. It's perfect. It's honestly perfect. So Absolute Carnage, I'm fully on board with this. Donny Cates, Ryan Stegman, J.P. Meyer, and Frank Martin. Outstanding job, guys. Yeah, so get on board with this. I think the other books are what? We're going to get Scream, Lethal Protectors, yeah, Miles, and Amazing Spider-Man, and there's one more. I can't remember the title of it, but it's the one that centers around the life symbiotes. Separation Anxiety.
That's right. There's a couple spin-off titles.
Oh, and there's a Ghost Rider one too.
Yeah.
So that all should be fun. So Absolute Carnage, it's not too late to jump on board. We are going to have a few copies tomorrow, but expect them to go fast. I mean, this is essentially like a trade paperback's worth of reading. It's a really good event. I mean, the last event was Jason Aaron at the helm, and this one's Donny Cates, and I can't think of two better people to go back-to-back with events. Like, this is just absurdly cool. So go pick this up while you have the chance. Next is Sensational SpiderMan, and this is one of those Marvel 80 years sort of rehash comics. It centers around Spidey getting the black suit and hanging out with the Fantastic Four, and it's the Marvel 80 years stuff. You're pretty much getting like a rehashed issue. It's nothing astounding. The art's pretty good. You get a story, but it's not going to be a continuing story. It's just a one shot from here on out, unless you decide to go read the trade of the former event. But yeah, Sensational SpiderMan. If you need a little more Spider-Man this week, pick this up. It's pretty good.
The black suit, man.
It's the black suit. Black suit. The black suit. I don't know if you know. There's the rule regarding the black suit is that a writer can use it whenever they feel like it. It just randomly happens.
That seems appropriate.
You guys should also know the backs of these comics this week. It is an advertisement, but it looks like a misprint because it looks like a storyline is coming to an end on the back, but it's an advertisement. We need to talk about Punisher this week. Keep in mind, the one book I was the most excited for was Absolute Carnage. I definitely had the most fun with that book this week. Maybe I didn't gush about it at all enough. I'm a little bit tired right now. However, Punisher this week was absurdly cool. Now, I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not going to spoil too much. We'll talk about... let's talk about it. Punisher went to Bagalia to deal with Baron Zemo and Hydra. He's been messing up Hydra. And now Hydra has moved to New York, so Punisher's gone chasing after them. Meanwhile, Baron Zemo is going to answer New York City's problem with the Thunderbolts. But they're not actually the Thunderbolts. They're knockoff Hydra Thunderbolts. So they're going to deal with Punisher. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of UN troops in New York City which are using tanks, which are actually Hydra, which has pretty much put Baron Zemo and Wilson Fisk at odds because Fisk is the current mayor of New York. So that's where we stand going into this. Now, I will say this. There are a few characters that team up with Punisher in this. One of them, Black Widow. I love seeing her teamed up with Punisher, and it makes sense considering her book felt so much like a Punisher book. It was great. The other person that he's teamed up that I really want to talk about is Moon Knight. Moon Knight and Punisher is the team up I absolutely wanted, and we've got it in this issue. It's not too much. It's sort of setting the stage, but you need to go pick this up if you're a Moon Knight fan. If you're a Punisher fan, go pick this up. More importantly, there's more than a couple people from Frank's past that are going to be teaming up with him. So you need to go check this out. Punisher doesn't play well with others all that often, so when it happens, you need to jump on board. So that's Punisher 14. Pretty excited for that. Next is a book called Coffin Bound, and it is, well, it's a bit wild. It's an apocalyptic auto show, is what it feels like, and it centers around a gal who, she's chased by an unstoppable killer, which is a guy that eats the earth to figure out where things are at. His name is Earth Eater, I think, and he has, I guess you would call it Earth Kinesis or something. He can control the earth. I can't remember what the actual power is called. But anyway, so she's chased by an unstoppable killer, and she's retreading her life, leaving nothing behind but burned rubber, ash, and the sun-scorched bones of those who get in her way. And that's the description of this. Was it good? Well, it was a little bit weird. I gotta tell you, it was a little bit weird. There was a strip club where a stripper was not just taking off her clothes, but taking off her skin. And that was weird to see. The main character talks to a dead vulture in a birdcage mounted on a body. And there's not much explanation for this stuff. So what I will say is if you like apocalyptic stuff and you like it being a little surreal, you might have a good time with Coffin Bound. The art is pretty good. I didn't hate the art. It was just the right amount of gritty for an apocalyptic story. And not too gritty. But the storyline so far is a little confusing. That doesn't mean I'm ruling it out yet. I'm just saying you're going to have to give this at least 2 issues before you decide if you really want to be on board. But that's Coffin Bound, so go check it out if you like apocalypse stuff.
You're already up to 7 printings on that.
On Coffin Bound?
Yeah.
Wow, I'm impressed. I was a little bit confused and didn't have the best time with it. I didn't hate it. I certainly didn't hate it. It was just a little weird.
Maybe there's something else going on.
Maybe Coffin Bound's a thing that's happened before that I just don't know. Next is Sinestro, and this is Year of the Villain. These are the I think they're the villain one-shots. I think they're one-shots. I'm relatively sure they're one-shots. But this is Sinestro. He's on a quest to kill gods. So basically, this book centers around Sinestro. Okay, so Lex has made his offer to the universe, mostly to the world. And people are aligning with Lex or choosing to align with Lex to rep Doom. Somebody has decided to remove the worlds that have aligned with Lex, and they're making a beeline towards Earth. So they're just destroying every world that is on board with Lex's offer. And so that's a problem. Yeah, that's a problem. And to stop these people is very difficult because they beam down, they basically mess up the world's core so that the world explodes. And then they leave. And anytime any of them are injured, they start repairing really well. And there's a reason for it. They've got whole civilizations living inside them, repairing them. So if this sounds like a little surreal, sort of Grant Morrison-esque stuff, it is, even though it's Russell. It's not Grant Morrison. It's Russell. But is it a good read? It was a great read. Honestly, I had a really good time with it. But, you know, I'm kind of a fan of Sinestro, and it was nice to see the Ultraviolet core stuff going into action. But yeah, it was a really good read. I had a good time with it. I think if you're a DC fan, you will have a good time with Sinestro for the Year of the Villain stuff. If you're a Marvel fan, this is probably not the book to jump in on. Although, I will say Apex Lex has been featured in a lot of DC stuff. And I really like the look of Apex Lex.
Yeah,
I think he's awesome. If you don't know what Apex Lex is, we'll touch on it when we get to Justice League, I think. Well, we'll leave it alone until then. Next book is No One Left to Fight. What this book actually should be called is generic Dragon Ball Z, because that's what it is. Each one of the characters in this story is a Dragon Ball Z knockoff character. Every single one of them is referencing Dragon Ball Z, and I mean it, like hardcore. Like, the characters look like them. They might have the gender swapped occasionally. They might have some tweaks to the costumes. But they're very much referencing Goku and Vegeta and Bulma and, yeah, pretty much Chi-Chi, all of them. They're referencing all of these Dragon Ball Z characters. And it basically takes place in a world where the main character, who's not named Goku, his name is Vale, I think it is, and the Vegeta character's name is Taver. Vale has basically fought and beat every villain and every bad guy there ever was, and there's nothing left to do. And he's become sort of like a deity to the people, where the people like love him and he's famous. And meanwhile, the Vegeta character is pissed off that he's famous and not him. And they're sort of dealing with that. Like, what do you do when you've pretty much won the world and just beat everything? And that's what this is going into. Now, did I hate this is the question. Because, generic Dragon Ball Z, that's a big thing to say. I think, honestly, that's exactly what this artist was going for. They were 100% trying to tell a Dragon Ball Z story, but weren't doing it with the licensed characters. Now, is it good? Did I have a good time with it? It was absolutely good. I had a great time with it. The storyline is a bit all over the place. It's kind of wild. It's not... I don't think it's a really deep storyline, but maybe they're building towards something. The art, on the other hand, was absurdly cool. Who is the artist on this? It's Aubrey Sitterson, Fico Ocio, and Taylor Esposito. Well, the art was completely on point. It was absurdly cool. I had a good time the whole way through this. So it's issue 2. Is it too late to jump on this? I don't think it is. I wasn't confused, and I don't think I read the first one, but I get what the artist is trying to do. I'm not sure I understand the scope of the story just yet, but I get what they're trying to do, and it's pretty good. So No One Left to Fight, go check this out if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan. Yeah, I think you honestly couldn't go wrong with it. Next, unless you'd be offended that they've sort of bastardized your character, which some people might, you never know. Next is Superman Up in the Sky, and this is Tom King's Superman, and oh God. Granted, I'm a Tom King fanboy, so you're going to have to take this with a grain of salt. However, Tom King needs to be writing Superman. He really, 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 really does. When he's done with Batman, please, I know Bendis is doing that right now, but shift him over to some Superman project because it was great. Now, this is a 2-part story. One part centers around a boxing match where Superman has challenged somebody to a boxing match to get some information. And, that plays out. Like, they weren't allowed to use some of their power, but they basically hashed it out. It was pretty good. I think the guy's name was Mido. I'm not sure what his name was. I can't quite remember. But it's Superman versus him. And then the second story was the really touching one. And it centers around Superman, floating out in space, being half dead, looking for this girl. He gets found, and this alien tries to bring him back to life. And the way the alien brings him back to life is by giving him some of his life force. And he can't quite do it. He can't quite give him enough, because he's killing himself in the process. So, but because he's done that, he's bonded to Superman, and he sort of gets his experiences and visions of his life. And he comes to the terms that maybe he needs to give more of his life to Superman to bring him back. And it was really, really touching. More importantly, what was touching was the language they used at the end of that story. And I can't say it too much without spoiling it, but it was just a bunch of stuff that sort of touched on things that have happened in Superman's life, maybe crises he's dealt with. And it ends with a very profound line that Superman is known for. And it was really awesome. I mean, it felt every bit as good as stuff from All-Star Superman with Grant Morrison's run. So Tom King, you've just knocked it out of the park. This is King, Kubert, Hope, and Anderson, and Superman Up in the Sky. Go jump on this because it's great. Okay, the next book on our list is something I'm super happy to talk about, and that is City of Bane. Now, the last book was really surreal, and we couldn't talk too much about it without spoiling it. But basically, now we can talk about it. And Bane has taken Gotham from Bruce Wayne, from Batman. And the reasoning he's done it, Lex makes him his offer of, hey, I will give you all the tools to get you what you want. Bane's only request is that the world, or the United States, honor his terms and do not send any heroes into Gotham. That's his request. Gotham is now his, and they will handle it, and the villains will get handled. And the only reason Bane wants to do this is because that's the one thing that Bruce Wayne has, or not Bruce Wayne, but that Batman has never done. And that is control Gotham. And so pretty much Bane's going to do that. And he's done that by enlisting the forces of some of the villains. I think we had a Riddler-Joker team up trying to solve something. And they were tracking Two-Face. And what Bane is basically doing is he's using Psycho Pirate to sort of control the villains, brainwash them in a way, but win them over to his side. And in doing so, he's sending out the other villains to catch the other ones. And this one, so good. It picks up on, Kite Man and I'm trying to remember the other characters, but Kite Man and Scarecrow are the two biggest ones. Okay, now, Gotham Girl is in this, and Gotham Girl does go up against one of the heroes that sort of breaks the treaty and goes into Gotham when he's not supposed to. And that is Captain Atom.
Oh.
Yeah, and now if you don't know Captain Atom is ridiculously powerful. He's might be one of the most powerful mutants in all of the DC universe. He can hold his own against Superman. And Gotham Girl goes up against him and whips him. It's not even a contest. Not even close. So if that doesn't tell you how powerful Gotham Girl is currently, and she's currently the sidekick of Thomas Wayne, like, that's a frightening combination. Thomas Wayne is being his version of Batman, and he's basically capturing and destroying villains. So this centers around Scarecrow and Kite Man, who are on the run trying to avoid Thomas Wayne, and not secretly, but hoping that the real Batman comes back. And if nothing else, one thing, I'm going to spoil one tiny thing about this story. There's one of the best lines I've ever seen, because Kite Man is a character that I really love. He was basically tortured and broken when his family got killed, and he just built a kite, and he goes around and he does crime on like high-rise buildings on the top levels. He's trying at crime, but he's not really giving it his all. He's just sad. And so he's on the run with Scarecrow. He winds up taking him to his lair, which is called his kite quarters, I think. Yeah, kite quarters. And he's like, I've taken you to my kite quarters. You're safe. And then Scarecrow's like, are we? Is this thing safe? And he's like, well, I built it, so no. And so just for that line alone, you really need to go pick up City of Bane. Is it awesome? It's outstanding. But I'm a giant Batman fan, and I'm a giant Tom King fan. So you really got to take my opinion with a grain of salt. I'm always gonna. I told Yogi, any week he asked me not to review Batman, it's not gonna happen. If there's a new Batman book, I'm gonna review it.
Would never happen.
It will never happen. But do I love this? I love it. I love all this City of Bane stuff. I can't wait to see the wrap up. You need to go get on board with this. Next is Berserker Unbound, and this is. I think the Berserker character has been around before. I'm not entirely sure, but I remember reading it back in the day. But I have brain damage from the army, so I forget stuff from time to time. I'm relatively sure this character is not a new character. So this centers around the Mongrel King, and basically he gets thrown into modern society in our world, which it's great. Dark Horse Comics. I had a good time with it. The art is great. The writing's great. It's on point. My only problem is that they did this with Conan in the Marvel Universe 2 months ago. So you're a little late, but it's not the first time something like this has been done, and it certainly won't be the last. But yeah, so Jeff Lemire, Mike Deodato Jr., Frank Martin, Steve Wands. It's an absurdly cool book. Keep in mind, my tiny criticism is just it's tiny. The art was, oh my god, so good. The art was amazing. The story was pretty choreographed. We've seen it before. The character was fun. He's pretty much just Ginger Conan. There's really nothing to complain about here. If you like fantasy and you like a good fantasy story with some a fish out of water fantasy story, that's exactly what Berserker Unbound is going to be, and it's pretty good. I had a good time with it, so go check it out. Next is, wow. So there is a lot to be said about this book, and it was almost the pick of the week. Almost the pick of the week for a lot of reasons. Let's see. This is the Immortal Hulk, and this is Al Ewing, Joe Bennett, I'm going to pronounce this name wrong, Rai Jose, Paul Mount. I'm sorry if I messed up names, but anyway, so Immortal Hulk has been just amazing. It has been just the most brilliant run, a beautiful story with amazing art, and each comic I pick up, I'm always like, they've gotten so deep in the last issue. I'm not sure how much deep it can go, and they really prove me wrong every single time. We've got a new form of abomination in play. I'm trying to think of everything else that's been happening. They've changed the Hulk mythos. We now know from the last issue that the Devil Hulk being called the Devil Hulk is not just a symbolic thing. He is actually possessed by the One Below All. Now, as far as I can remember, this is we've heard mention of the One Below All before, but we've never actually seen it, and that's just I have never seen it. We've seen the One Above All, which basically looks like well, it looks like homeless Keanu Reeves is what the character looks like. But I don't recall ever seeing the One Below All. However, we now know that he's attached to the Hulk, and I think the last issue actually ended with Banner being approached by a heavenly agent, which looked like it might be serving the One Above All. So I mean that would make sense if they put them opposite. But so this one picks up. Pretty much they're dealing with the fact that Abomination has been. The Abomination has been taken over by the general that was hunting them. And meanwhile, what is it? Let me see. Joe Fixit is back in play. Betty is the Red Harpy. There's just so much going on with this story, and yet it was quite deep. It was really sort of moving. And it always really is. Joe Fixit and the reporter McGee, they have a conversation, and Joe Fixit is doing it in the sun, so he's calling himself Sunshine Joe, which I thought was just the most awesome name for him, because we haven't seen Joe Fixit in Hulk form at all in this story. He's only been in human form, which I've never seen before. So he's talking to McGee, and there's some foreshadowing in what he says. He talks about how she is, if anything, she's clearly very, very tough. And I think the way he worded it is hinting that her character itself is going to somehow wind up with a gamma sort of creation, some version of the Hulk. And I think that's what they're building towards. So the Immortal Hulk, really, if you're not reading this and you're a Marvel fan, something's wrong with you. Like, you really need to get on board with this. It's so stupid good. And just the art alone is great, but what they're doing with the Hulk mythos is all over the board and somehow works, so go check it out. Next is Justice League number 29, and we needed to talk about this issue because it's amazing. A few issues back, no, I don't think it was a few issues back, I think it was Drowned Earth. So quite a ways back, we had Jarro imagining himself in a Robin costume. And in this particular issue, we get to see it brought to life. And let's just talk about this for a second. Jarro, as a Robin, is a complete badass. Who knew? He's amazing. He might honestly be one of my favorite Robins, and that's saying a lot. So I love what they've done with the Jarro character. So if you don't know the history of I shouldn't say it's Jarro. If you don't know the history of Starro, Starro has been the longest running villain in Justice Society history.
Yeah.
He was their first villain in their first comic. And he's been Jarro the Conqueror for I don't know how long. He was at the very beginning of the Rebirth run. They did it again. And he'd given up. At one point he tried to help the Justice League, and he'd wound up costing himself most of his life. And there was a tiny piece of him left alive, so he was placed in a jar by Batman, and he became Jarro, and he was very childlike. And even in Drowned Earth, I think Batman protected him and was holding the jar, and he was like, "Now calm down, son. It's gonna be okay." Yeah, he treated him like a son, and this is no different. This was equally as touching. I have grown to love the Jarro character, and I really, truly hope he stays a Robin because it was awesome to see. So yeah, Justice League number 29. Go pick this up if you're a Justice League fan. Go pick this up if you're a DC fan. You should be on board with this stuff because it all centers around the year of the villain anyways, and it's great. We've pushed into the year of the villain Dark Gifts. We've pushed beyond the offer. Did you know that? We got enough time to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so the next book we're going to cover is Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. This is the third iteration of the Batman TMNT crossover. And this one was honestly my favorite. At least it started off as my favorite. Because we had each of the TMNT characters and their world meshed together. And they all represented different Robins. And I think Raphael was Jason Todd, which makes sense. He was clearly Red Hood. And then Leonardo was Nightwing. It was great. So At this point, Shredder has been reintroduced, and the Shredder has convinced the Foot Clan that they shouldn't be part of the Smiling Man Clan, which is actually the Joker Clan. And so they're casting that off. The Turtles have sort of realized who they are, and they've cast off the Robin outfits. Batman's figured out who he is. But meanwhile, they're all fighting, what was it, the Anti-Krang? The Anti-Monitor Krang? Which is a Krang Anti-Monitor mashup. And he's pretty much pulling the strings, trying to control the Smiling Man Clan to keep these worlds apart. And he does something quite insane, which this is not a good idea. He gives the Joker a mother box, which I can't think, even if you are a supervillain, that's dumb. Like, that's probably one of the dumbest things you could do, is give the Joker a mother box. And so that's what happens in this issue. And it's great. It's great. I'm still having a really good time with it. But wow, what a mistake Krang has made. So anyways, Batman TMNT issue number 3, go check it out. People are sort of waking up in their world, and they're figuring out who they are and what they have to do. And it's a fun ride so far. The art is really on point too. This is Tinian the Fourth, Williams second, and Colwell. Wow, a lot of artists that are the seconds and the thirds and the fourths.
Generational.
Yeah, I wonder if Mick Gray is like a fifth. We should ask him. Next is Transformers Ghostbusters, issue number 3, and this is totally on point. First of all, I mean, I like that Optimus Prime is on the cover in the Ectotron colors, or the Ecto-1 colors. That's pretty dope to see. More importantly, they have so many references that reference both the Ghostbusters world and the Transformer world, and they hit them every time. They stick them perfectly. This one begins with Janine dealing with Ectotron being a giant Transformer in the firehouse, and he like dents a pole, and she calls him clumsy, and she kind of yells at him, but she isn't shocked or freaking out. And as a Transformer, Ectotron is like, is your whole species this accepting of different creatures and different people? And they're like, no, Janine's just an exceptional one of us. and so it shows, the writing shows that the writers themselves, and the artist obviously, because I think these are the same artists for all Ghostbusters, but it shows that the writing, they know the characters really well. And that's Burnham, Schoening, and Delgado. Great showing, guys. Transformers Ghostbusters is still really, really fun. Yeah. And honestly, I think the last Ghostbusters event I had a good time with. The one before that, the Crossing Over, was a bit confusing because there was like every Ghostbuster in history and all the different timelines. Yeah, it was wild. So, it was fun. I mean, I like seeing the Ghostbusters cartoon stuff, but it was still really confusing. Next is Invisible Woman, and I had a lot of hopes for this series, and it's not super disappointing. But if you want like a Fantastic Four Invisible Woman story, you're probably... she does do Invisible Woman stuff, but this reads more like a spy thriller. And go figure. I mean, she's hanging out with Black Widow. It sort of makes sense. Like, currently they're in, Madripoor? Mm-hmm. Madripoor! Don't hang out there. It's dangerous as heck. And she's basically hunting down her previous, I think, co-worker, co-spy. So, from her life before marrying Reed and everything else. So, it's fun to see. You do get plenty of sort of Invisible Woman, Black Cat back and forth. They make a really good team. I just want to preface this. This does not feel like a Fantastic Four book. It really, really does feel like a spy thriller. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to want that sort of thing to really enjoy this. And that's Invisible Woman number 2. It's a really good showing. And if you like sort of detective and spy thriller type stuff, you'll probably have a good time with this. Next is Lois Lane, the 12-issue maxi series by DC Comics. And this is written by Rucka, Perkins, and Mount. Now, excuse me, keep in mind, I'm a pretty big Greg Rucka fan. However, I don't know, this hasn't really hooked me. Granted, it's a detective story. It's a reporter story that is actually a detective story, so it's cleverly disguised. Something about the art is off for me in this issue. It's just, maybe it's too gritty, but you know me, I'm kind of snobby when it comes to art. The story itself is a little confusing. There are times that I like it, but they keep doing that whole because Lois Lane was seen kissing Superman, and everybody knows that now that she's quote unquote cheated on her husband of 12 years. And they're all sort of, people are saying things to her on the street and in passing, because she's famous in the DC universe. So people are saying things back and forth, and they did that last issue, and they started off the last issue like that, and they've started off this issue like that, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of getting tiring. It is what it is. I guess it'll eventually have to be resolved. But I don't know. The story was not as strong as I wanted it to be. It mostly felt like filler. But if you like a detective story, you like a crime story, you know, I mean, Rucka is building towards something big, so you have to know that by the end of this, it's going to be really deep and cool. But for right now, issue number 2, it's kind of iffy. I will say that you should probably get on board with this if you like Rucka. Just jump in and give it a couple more issues, and you'll probably be hooked, and it'll be good. But Lois Lane, if you're a DC fan, it's a maybe. If you're a Superman fan, you'll probably want to get on board with this because, you know, anything tied to Superman is pretty good for you. But yeah, so if you're a Marvel fan and you want to dip your toes in DC, this is definitely not the book to do it. So, yeah. Next is Champions, issue number 8, because the world still needs heroes. And this centers around Nova Star. And does he get his helmet back? His black helmet of the Nova Corps? Yes, obviously. It's on the cover. Meanwhile, he's been chasing it around the galaxy. He went all the way to the other side of the galaxy with a gal who she basically wants to kill him because to restore her honor. So he goes all the way over to the other side of the galaxy to find his helmet. Comes to find out it's not there. Comes back to Earth. It's on Earth, and he can kind of sense where it's at. Why couldn't he have done that before they left? I don't know. That's news to me. But weird thing aside, is the story fun? Yes. Oh God, yes. The story is fun. There's a lot of action. I like this new Champions team. I had a good time with it. So go check it out. More importantly, Viv is in this, and I like Viv. Viv is a great character. Vision's daughter is in this, and she might be having some issues. Riri is in this, so we got Ironheart in this. So yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff about this Champions team. However, this is sort of wrapping up Nova's storyline. So if you don't want to jump in mid-story on something, you should probably wait one issue and jump in on the next issue, because the next issue feels like it's going to be a fresh start. So Champions number 8, it's pretty good. If you're a Champions fan, you want to jump in on it, check it out. If you like a lot of action, check it out. It's a good book for you. If you're one of those people that has to wait until a story arc is restarted, then wait for issue 9, because that's going to be your issue. Next is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and my God, I need to talk about this. So I'm a huge Buffy fan, so I'm a bit biased, and I love the old TV show very, very much. I wasn't a fan of the first movie, not the first movie, the only movie, right? Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that movie, but I love the TV show. And so this is a retelling of Buffy in our modern times, and they're taking a ton of liberty with these characters. They basically said that we have these characters, and we have these playing fields, and we have these linchpins of time that we're going to have to hit and we're going to have to tackle. But we don't have to do everything the way we originally did it. And it shows, because Xander is now a half human, half vampire, and Willow has given away part of her soul to ensure that he keeps some of his humanity. And so it's awesome. It's awesome. I've never seen Xander used like this, because usually he's pretty much the Zeppo. He's the human that doesn't have any abilities, but still ponies up when the time comes. He's kind of the clutch hitter. And it's cool. It's nice to see that character used like that. It's nice to see... I mean, Willow is completely tormented by the fact that she gets it, and that's where we open up with this. But there's so much character in this, and it's Jordi Belair, David Lopez, Sas Milej, and Raul Angelo, and they know the source material very well, and it shows. It really shows, both in writing and art. It's great. So if you're a Buffy fan, if you're even slightly a Buffy fan, you watched a couple episodes and think you like it, go check out this series, because it's great, and it's really true to the source.
C covers are still available.
Oh, and we have C covers. C covers, if you don't know, C covers in the Buffy comic are all of the different Slayers throughout the ages. And they show each one of them for an era, and it's really cool.
This one's like feudal Japan.
Yeah, this one's feudal Japan. It's so cool. Next is Ronin Island, and this is the Greg Pak. Man, I'm gonna murder this name. Giannis Milo no Giannis.
Milano
Milano Giannis. Giannis Milano Giannis. That's like Bob Steve. Is what that's what that name feels like. I'm sorry. I probably ruined that name completely. Irma Nivilla. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm terrible with names, but what I will tell you is I'm pretty good with comics, and I know a good comic when I see it, and Ronin Island has been amazing. So it's pretty much, it centers around an island that is still tied to feudal Japan, and they've still got samurai, and some of the samurai have risen up from regular samurai families, and oddly enough, a couple people have risen up from poverty to the rank of samurai. And so their island there is like mostly a farming nation, but with some samurai and stuff like that. And then they get attacked by the undead.
Yeah.
And it's bloody, it's brutal, and they're sort of grappling with what to do, and they're learning to adapt, and their shogun is coming up with ideas. And that's pretty much what this is. So is it good writing? Yes, it's good writing. Is it good art? The art is so on point. Like, it's great. It feels like the perfect mix of like almost manga and modern comic art is what it kind of feels like to me. I really, really like it. I don't even know what it is. Like, is it watercolor or not? It kind of looks like watercolor at times. It kind of doesn't. But this story is amazing. The art is amazing. If you're on board with Ronin Island, I don't think they're going to let up anytime soon. It's issue number 5, and it's a pretty good read, so come check it out. We might even have some back issues for you if you want to jump in. But, if you like this kind of stuff, if you're like me and you like Usagi Yojimbo, which I love, Ronin Island is just a hop, skip, and a jump from that kind of storyline, so go check it out. Next is Deceased, and I was really disappointed because the cover looked like we were going to get some Sergeant Rock stuff. We did not. It did not happen. However, was it good? Oh, yes, it was absurdly good. I've loved everything about this Deceased run, and I don't want to say what happens because I've probably already spoiled too many comics as is, but a very powerful meta does a very powerful thing, and it wrecks a bunch of stuff, including maybe a pivotal city. So you need to go check this out. It's great. Pretty much what's going on with Deceased? There was the anti-life equation. Darkseid got it, but it was tainted. It spread to Cyborg, and Cyborg accidentally spread it to the rest of the world. So they're trying to figure out how to survive without the anti-life equation. And it comes to pass that Superman has not been viewing the world with regular vision this whole time. The second he figured out that the anti-life equation could mess him up, he switched to X-ray vision, which I think is genius. Because now he can't see technology, so it's not going to mess him up. He's just going to see through it and see the innards. So good job, Soups. So anyways, all of that is covered in Deceased. One of the Robins will be taking the mantle of Bat because Batman is lost. And you need to come check this out. It's a good read. So Deceased number 4, go pick this up. Next is Sea of Stars. And this is basically a space survival story, sci-fi story, where a guy has been separated from his son and he's got to re-find his son. So it's The Martian retold with, what is it, like a father and son story? I guess. Not really. There's so much sci-fi. It's totally not like The Martian, but it is a survival story. And I'm really partial to survival games. So I do like survival stories. So this is actually a pretty good read. More importantly, the art is just absurdly cool. And the way so the son is sort of off doing his own thing and discovering that he can survive in the reaches of space for whatever reason. And that's very mystical and not explained yet. However, the father can't, and the father is very much determined to find his son, and he's just doing whatever he can to do it, and it's great. He's low on energy for his life support. He's low on stuff for his suit. His suit's cracked. He doesn't care. He's gonna find his son no matter what, and I love seeing it. So Sea of Stars, it's Stephen Green and Rico Renzi. It's a really, really good showing. I've loved everything about it so far, so I think you need to check it out. Next is Canto, and I missed the first issue, so if I'm honest, I have no idea what's going on with this Canto character. It shows him as a little knight that's like a goblin sort of looking character, and meanwhile there's a boy that's a human that is, doing things to slowly become a knight, and they're doing it at the same time. So I don't know if this was his life in another world, if they're referencing that there's two worlds where these two characters are sort of mirror images of each other. I'm not entirely sure. However, this is A Knight's Tale involving a goblin riding on like a crazy humanoid ogre thing, and it's great. Like, I had a really good time with it. It's fantasy in a way that you don't really see fantasy too often. And it seems fun. It's the littlest knight with a big old axe running around and fighting things. So I've had a good time with this Canto issue. I actually can't wait to read more. I think I need to go back and find the first issue and figure out what's going on. But issue number 2, not terribly confusing, but there is some stuff that is still sort of iffy. Do I love this cutesy knight character? Yeah, I do. I totally do. So go check this out if you're a fantasy head that just needs a little fantasy. Come check this out.
And third printing for number 1 drops August 21st.
Third printing for number 1. Come pick it up August 21st. Next is Harley Quinn 64. And, what do we know about Harley? Her comics rarely take themselves seriously. And they pretty much go all over the board. And that's because pretty much Harley is the unreliable narrator. And that's what you need to know about Harley's comics. That's what's happening here. But she's tackling a very real issue of her mother having cancer and being in the hospital. And it's kind of touching at times and kind of silly and whimsical, but that's because Harley is sort of all over the board. So I would say go check this out because it's her last issue of The Offer. Well, it says Dark Gifts, but it's still, the back of the book says The Offer. But it gets a little deep near the end. And as somebody who has lost a parent to cancer and lost a grandfather to cancer, I think you should totally go read this. It's a good story. It's a little painful, but I had a pretty good time with it. It is pretty funny in the middle, though. So if that topic is sort of a serious and sensitive thing for you, where you can't, get a little lighthearted sometimes, then don't check this out. This is not your jam. Next is the Death-Defying Devil, and I think this is an old character that they've had before, but I don't know this character at all. And one of the things, as a paratrooper that was in the Army, this book opens with, there was this guy, right, in World War II. His name was Audie Murphy. Now, so, as an infantryman, all of us love Audie Murphy. He, how many Germans did he kill in World War II?
I don't know.
It was it was 100, right? It was well over 100. He got every award that our Army could give. He got the Medal of Honor twice, which the Medal of Honor, usually if you get it, you're dead. Like, generally, it requires sacrificing your life to place the mission first. There are some people that live. I think, Yogi, you actually have a buddy who got the Medal of Honor and lived.
First.
But, yeah, it's a very, very difficult thing to live through, and Audie Murphy got it twice. So he's pretty much most infantryman's legend, and the fact that this book started with it, I thought it was dope. So what do we know about the character? Well, the Devil doesn't seem to like to talk all that often. He wears a split red and blue costume, and he wields boomerangs, which is a little weird. And so this story centers around a bunch of people squatting in a house that are sort of living together in the poor part of town. And the Devil comes to the rescue from these guys who are pretty much going to rape this guy's gal. Like that's just a common theme in this story, is that they're going to do weird stuff to women. So if that bothers you, definitely don't go read it. However, do I want to know more about this hero? I really do. He was kind of a cool hero. And his story's pretty much a mystery. And more importantly, they brought up Audie Murphy in the first page, so that sort of sold me. But you have to know that there are some stuff that if you got bad trauma like that in your past, this is probably the book for you to avoid. And I'm just going to place it out there like that. Okay. The next book is Arrow, and the way they're splitting up Arrow and Swordmaster, and I think Wave is getting a book, if I'm not mistaken.
Is she?
Is she? Maybe I'm confused. Maybe she's not. However, Arrow and Swordmaster, the way they're working these books is half the book is done in very Japanese-inspired manga, and the other half is done in traditional comic art, and it works. It works surprisingly well. Did I have a good time with this character? Yeah, I did. Again, it's more she's kind of dealing with an issue that I think involves her old mentor, and she gets it handled in the first story, and then the second story is another divergent story that, it didn't have the same striking effect on me, but it did involve Wave, which was kind of cool to see. But yeah, these stories are cool. They're just really unique. Like, I don't have anything to gauge this off of in the Marvel Universe, because it's not just two different stories told in two different ways. They're told in, like, manga is, I think manga and comics share a lot of stuff in how they,
one feeds the other.
yeah, one feeds the other in a way, but they're very different in a lot of ways, and it shows. Like this, the first story is always so different from the second one, and that's not a bad thing. It's just I don't have anything really to gauge beyond Swordmaster and Arrow. So these are very, very unique books that you probably should be checking out. So Arrow issue 2, it's a pretty good showing. So the next book on our list was Black Cat, and this picked up, the last issue was her breaking into, wait for it, the dumbest thing you could possibly do in the Marvel Universe, break into the Sanctum Sanctorum, which is Doctor Strange's house on Bleecker Street, is not the thing that you should break into. Pretty much never. I think that's the unwritten rule, because anyone who's ever tried, at least as far as I remember, has gotten messed up. Just tried to enter the house without permission has gotten messed up. And so that is where Black Cat picks up, and she sort of brings what she calls a Merlin with her, which is a wizard, to sort of handle things. And the last issue ended with him getting his artifact, his gem, and getting all his powers back, and just turning on all of them. So it wasn't the best thing that happened, but, you know, it's nice. More importantly, this issue, I mean, it picks up where that issue left off, but it involves a certain dog that we've grown to love.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Good old Bats the Ghost Dog is in this issue. So any comic with Bats is better, in my opinion, because I love that character. But he sort of gets confused in this issue, and he's like, I know exactly who you are, to Black Cat. He's like, you're Silver Sable. And she's like, yes, that's correct. And just sort of goes with it. So Black Cat number 3 is a great, whimsical, wonderful book that I think everybody who is a Marvel fan should be jumping on board. If you're even the slightest Spider-Man fan, you should be jumping on board with Black Cat, because it's great, and she does feel like an extension of those kind of books. And I really think it's because she dated him. They fit somewhere along the line. The Marvel writers sort of figured out that these two characters work together because, I don't know, they're kind of similar in some ways. So it really shows. It feels like an extension of sort of his books and the comedy and everything. So yeah, Black Cat number 3, go check it out. It's awesome. Next is House of X, and this is issue number 2. And is it good? The last one was an explosive story that just drew me in, and as somebody who is not a giant mutant fan, I loved it. Hickman can tell a hell of a story, and he is not let up in this one at all. It's great. This involves Moira. So the character itself is one of the first mutants of sorts, and she basically, whenever she dies, she retains the knowledge of her last life and is reincarnated into another life. And so because of it, this character has been through pretty much every iteration of timeline and storyline and whatever else that the X-Men have dealt with. And I think they reference like the, was it the 80s when they were curing the X gene, and then they reference the Sentinel attacks and all that stuff. They reference Apocalypse, like she was Apocalypse's gal during that time. So she's seen it all, and she sort of knows that these sort of things are going to happen. And in this life, she just says, you know, forget it. I'm going to go and get this thing handled. I'm going to cheat. And she just goes straight to Xavier and tells him right away what's everything she's witnessed. And that sort of radicalizes Xavier. And we're not, more importantly, it's telling us that we're not getting the same Charles Xavier that we know and love. This is someone different. This is someone who might be quite a bit different. We don't know. His offer in the first House of X, he offered to give mankind, the nations of mankind, if they would honor Krakoa and see it as its own country and leave it be, that he would give them a pill that extends their life by 5 years, a pill that removes any damage of the brain, and then one other pill that I can't remember. But it seemed like a very Magneto-esque offer. It didn't seem like a Professor X offer. It seemed like it was almost like, hey, you know, take a bite of this apple. I will give you this, but something might be attached. Like, I don't know. So it's twisted. And I think it shows that Hickman's writing has so much depth. And there's so much to work with, and you don't really know what kind of story he's telling until you get to the end. And this shows it. Like, I didn't know much about the Moira character before this, and by the end of it, I knew all of it, and I loved knowing about this character, and this character is super interesting to me. So, House of X #2, should you go buy it? Yes. Would it be a pick of the week if Absolute Carnage didn't come out this week? Yes, absolutely would. But, okay, it's Absolute Carnage. So, next is Savage Avengers, and I think they're wrapping this up at 5, it looks like. It looks to me like they're wrapping this. I'm sad to say it, but it's something at the end of this seems very final. So I'm hoping that's not the case because I really love this Savage Avengers team. Who knew? It's got who's on this team? Brother Voodoo, Punisher, Conan, Elektra, Wolverine, and in fact, I think the last issue. Every single issue has had either Wolverine trying a new thing with his power, like that we haven't seen before, or it's had like Conan and Wolverine doing something in a very unexpected way. And I think the last issue, like Wolverine gets knocked out, and Conan's like, "Hey, it's not the time to pass out." And he like picks up Wolverine and starts swinging him around with his like claws out, and it was just the funniest damn thing I'd seen in a long time. So I mean, go figure. It's Jerry Jerry Dugan. Dugan's writing Dead Rabbit, isn't he? But it's coming back, but it's not Dead Rabbit. It's Dead Eyes. That's how they're going. I think it's Dugan. Don't quote me. I might be completely off base. But it's called Dead Eyes. We just found out about that, and we're super excited because when we opened the store, Dead Rabbit was like one of my favorite books that wasn't DC and Marvel that I was all about. And then they got sued by that bar, and they had to like cancel it and stop it, and there was no word as to whether it was coming back, and then they had just announced it as Dead Eyes.
And it is Jerry Dugan.
Yeah, I knew it. Jerry Dugan. Yeah. Duggan. Jerry Dugan.
Canto.
Probably getting names wrong. But this is Dugan, Diodato, and Martin. And it's great. Everything about the Savage Avengers run has been amazing. It's been fun. It's the right kind of action with these characters. And what's weird is it feels like a fantasy story because they're in the Savage Lands for like most of it. And it just works. Brother Voodoo is like the clutch hitter that I never knew I wanted on a super team. And I didn't think this team would work because they're all just type A personalities. But for whatever reason, this team is perfect. And in fact, the one character that I think has not shown a normal like portrayal of this character and doesn't feel quite right is Punisher. Which is weird because Punisher is usually the one character that I identify the most with. But we're going to see next issue because he's going to belt out. So, yeah, that's all I can say. Savage Avengers, issue #4. If you're not on board with this, it's not too late. It's not too deep. All you need to know is that it's basically a Conan story with Marvel characters because Conan, what are the problems that Conan has? Let's go over them. Blood gods. He has to deal with a cult of a blood god. What's another problem? Wizards that usually work for a cult of the blood god. And then he's got to deal with a cult of the blood god. So at some point he deals with alcoholism and another cult of a blood god.
Probably.
So that's exactly what they're dealing with in this is a cult of the blood god. Because I don't know, I guess Conan, he's just got bad.
If it works for him, I mean, you know.
Yeah. Eventually Conan's going to like join up with the blood god. I want to see that story where they take a Conan-like character and instead of worshiping Crom, he's like, yeah, I'm on the side of the blood god. He's just like running around doing evil.
Or they get Chrome tied up and they pull off his mask and he's a blood god the entire time.
Crom is a blood god the entire time.
It's old man blood god.
Old man, I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling barbarians. Anyway, Savage Avengers is amazing. I love everything about this book. Go pick it up. Next is Space Bandits. This issue the last book opened with a starship called the Starship Lionel Richie, and right there I was sold on this storyline. It centers around one of the gals is basically she got betrayed by her crew. She put together like the best bounty hunters in the world, the best killers in the world, not in the world, in the universe. She put together the best killers in the universe, and of course they turned on her and took her loot. The other one was doing this thing where she was wanted, and her boyfriend at the time would turn her in, collect the bounty, and then break her out. And he did this back and forth until the bounty, like, he just kept collecting money. And then the last time he was like, no, I'm not going to pick her up. And just left her in jail. That sucks. Like, and that's where it opens, is they're in jail and they've got to figure a way out and settle their scores, and I love it. And is the storyline really deep? No. Is the storyline like really, is it going to move you? Nah, not really. The storyline at times does feel a little telegraphed, but it works. It works surprisingly well. I want to know more about these characters. I want them to mess people up. They're brutal at times. It shows. There's some very blunt moments. I loved it. I love everything about it. More importantly, I love the 80s space vibe. Who knew that I wanted that? I don't know. It just feels like a space version of like a cyberpunk theme. Because, you know, cyberpunk is like really 80s inspired at times, and that's what it feels like.
There's also that Bronze Age Boogaloo or something.
Yeah, that comic was pretty good. Well, it wasn't pretty good. It was okay. The art was good, and then they just canceled it. So, but yeah, Space Bandits. This is Mark Millar. Oh, go figure. It's pretty good. Matteo Scalera. It's good. Go check it out. Next is Green Lantern, and this is Morrison, Sharp, and Olaf, and I have had issues with Sharp's art. I think I've been pretty vocal about it. I'm a huge Lantern Corps fanboy, but his art felt way too gritty when we started this storyline. And, you know, I saw that he was back on in this book. He wasn't on the last book, and I got a little nervous about it. But it feels like he sort of dialed back some of the grit, and it's a little better. It's a little better. More importantly, the storyline is great for one reason, and one reason only. Did you know that there's a DC Comics world that involves characters that are psychedelic drug users, essentially? And yeah. And the Green Lantern of that world is very clearly Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. He is 100% inspired by Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. And I'm telling you, like, the character, he's got a green shirt. I mean, he's wearing glasses. He's got the same kind of hair. He's got bell bottoms on. And he says stuff like, "Far from it, alien dudes. Like, chill. I can score all the HTO you need from the Martian ice cap." Like, it's friggin' Shaggy. And more importantly, there is a Batman Green Lantern, which is kind of cool to see. But it's basically Green Lanterns from all the different parts of the metaverse. And they're sort of coming together to figure something out. And the Batman Green Lantern, at one point, literally tells the Shaggy Green Lantern that he's not a fan of weed. And you need to pay attention. And I loved it. I had a good time with it. I'm finding that as Morrison's run continues on the Green Lantern stuff, I'm having a better and better time with it. Yeah, go buy it. It's good. Next is Agents of Atlas, and this is issue number 1. Now, we had new Agents of Atlas during the War of the Realms event, and it was a pretty good comic, and this picks up after that, and it's actually a really good comic. Although it centers around a super team, I want to say it's a super team, that I'm not sure that they've fully explained, and I don't recognize this team from anywhere. And that happens later on in the story, so I'm pretty sure eventually they're going to be put on a collision course with that team. But New Agents of Atlas is coming together. We've got Amadeus Cho, and he's got a crush on Luna Snow, and he sort of confesses to Silk. He's like, "Hey, man, like, you know, what's going on with her?" And immediately, like, Silk figures it out. She's like, "Ew, dude, you're like 19. He's like, "What? I'm 20?" And like, so it's good. New Agents of Atlas. It's fun. It's lighthearted. It's a new super team that I'm pretty much on board with. I've liked everything about this team so far. More importantly, I don't know, I like Swordmaster. The character himself is just a dude with a giant sword that feels like it's like Final Fantasy VII. He's just running around with a Buster Sword the whole time. Anyway, so New Agents of Atlas, I say jump on that. It's a pretty good book. And that's all of our books for this week. I literally reviewed a novel this week. Like, it's a giant amount of books. So we have a lot of good stuff. So come in and pick it up. Honestly, there was no book this week that I really hated. I think the Lois Lane book was like I was kind of on the fence. That was the only one. The rest of them were just outstanding. It's just a great week for comics, so come pick some up.
Don't forget Sunday.
Sunday, what's going on Sunday?
It's our anniversary.
Oh, Sunday is our year anniversary, so come in. We're going to have a sale. We're still sort of hammering out the details. What's the sale?
Yeah.
We're hammering out the details.
Hammering out the details.
I think it's 75% off.
Maybe.
On back issues, so you can come get back issues for, I don't know, like $1. So yeah, so come check us out. Sunday, August 11th is our year anniversary, and that's our show for this week.